People are always asking me if I know Tyler Durden, to which I answer, yeah man, I watched Fight Club. Created in 1999 by David Fincher, Fight Club is a movie that's basically a mix of action, thriller, and dark comedy. The movie failed at the box office back when it came out and was criticized as being violent and uncultural, but as the time went on, it obviously gained its own following. I will explain the plot and my full thoughts of the movie soon, but generally I feel like this is one of those controversial movies that you will either love or hate. If you're wondering why I chose to review this movie, it's basically because I watched it recently and loved a lot of aspects that I'll review in this video. Also, this movie does contain some topics that are intended for an older audience, but I'll try my best to keep it family friendly. Anyway, let's start reviewing Fight Club. First off, I have to explain Fight Club's plot, which is very difficult because the movie is over 2 hours long, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. The story centers on the narrator, a character that works as an office worker in his dystopian society. The narrator doesn't have a name since he is supposed to represent a regular citizen with no unique or extraordinary features. That is already a detail I really like about this movie. The narrator lives a boring life that consists of working a lot on his job and buying all the unnecessary furniture from IKEA due to living in a society full of capitalism and consumerism. He also struggles with massive insomnia and stress, which makes him go to special sessions with people that struggle with serious diseases. One of the people he meets and befriends is Bob, who has testicular cancer. He goes to those sessions in order to cry and finally regain his sleep, which works well until a new woman called Marla Singer joins the sessions. Narrator knows that Marla as well as him doesn't have any disease, and that feeling of lie causes insomnia to return. They eventually settle with going to different sessions to avoid seeing each other, but that doesn't matter much because once the narrator is on a plane ride, he meets the movie's other major character, Tyler Durden. Tyler can be described as a strong, smart, and confident anarchist who doesn't like the way their society works. After having a conversation on the plane, the narrator learns that Tyler also has a soap business and considers him as the most interesting person he's met on these one-time plane rides. Once he returns to his city, the narrator's luggage gets confiscated and his house gets burned down. With nowhere else to go to, he calls Tyler and has a drink with him at the bar. After allowing the narrator to stay at his place, both of them start fighting out of nowhere and agree that they should do it again some other day. We also learn that Tyler has night jobs as a movie projectionist, where he likes to add inappropriate frames to kids' movies, and also as a waiter where he treats the customers as trash. Anyway, Tyler lives in an abandoned house that looks like it hasn't been cleaned in years. A lot of important stuff happens after this, but I'll try to explain shortly. A lot of people start getting interested with the two fighting after leaving the bar, which eventually makes the narrator and Tyler create the Fight Club in the bar's basement. Marla and Tyler start sleeping with each other because of the narrator not caring about her, which isn't that important now, but will be by the end. Fight Club gains its audience of similar people that want to get rid of their stress by fighting, such as Bob, whom we have seen earlier in the movie. There are 8 rules created by Tyler in the club, which I still remember, and the first 2 rules are the same for the purpose of everyone to understand that they shouldn't talk about Fight Club, which they obviously don't follow. As the movie goes on, Fight Club starts spreading across the country and turning into an anarchic organization called Project Mayhem to break up civilization so they can make something better out of the world. Also, the narrator makes a deliberate scene at work of his boss beating him up, so that this could give him a raise for him to work at home and focus more on Fight Club. Anyway, Project Mayhem becomes very powerful and threatening, with their ultimate plan being the explosions of the buildings that are headquarters of the major credit card companies. When we get back to Fight Club and witness Edward Norton beating up Jared Leto's random character, the narrator, Tyler, and 2 other characters get into a car. When Tyler drives the car, he deliberately gets on the other side of the road for them to get into a car crash. Also, when the narrator tries to stop him, we get the reveal of Tyler burning the narrator's house in order to change his boring life into something more risky and full of adrenaline. After Tyler disappears on the next day and Bob dies from one of Project Mayhem's operations, the narrator realizes that everything has gone too far and sets out to different cities to find Tyler. His attempts are unsuccessful until he considers the fact that everyone, including Marla, thinks he's Tyler, which then makes him discover Tyler in the hotel room. Now for all of you still watching, get ready because we're about to get one of the greatest twists in movie history. It turns out that the narrator and Tyler were the same person this whole time, and that the reason the narrator always woke up in different places was because he was Tyler during the night. At first I felt like there was no way this could be real, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. We never saw these two interact with each other, we saw them interact with each other, but never saw them interact with other characters at the same time, so it would make sense for Tyler to be the narrator's personality from Schizophrenia. Anyway, the narrator learns the shocking truth and runs to warn Marla about needing to leave the city, since Project Mayhem could see her as a potential threat. Marla agrees to leave but tells the truth about the narrator being mentally ill. As the final act of the movie begins, the narrator rushes to one of the buildings to prevent the explosions from happening. In the process, he fights Tyler, who doesn't want the narrator to stop the bomb, which looks really creepy from the third person since Tyler isn't real after all. Eventually he stops the bomb but gets tied up by Tyler in a different room that serves as a view for explosions. This scene is actually used in the first scene of the movie, but the viewer obviously doesn't understand what's going on in the beginning until watching the full thing. Anyway, the narrator finally convinces himself of Tyler not being real and steals his gun. Then he points the gun to his cheek and shoots himself, saying that his eyes are open now. This results in Tyler dying and the narrator surviving with an injury. Afterwards, Marley is placed in the room by the Project Mayhem participants and left alone with the narrator, who ends the movie by saying that she met him in a very strange time in his life. In the end, all the other buildings explode as the narrator and Marla view the accomplished goal of Project Mayhem. Jesus Christ, that was a long summary. Despite that recap being long, I'm still surprised to say that I didn't really mention a lot of stuff from this movie. I only tried talking about the most important stuff, so there were some really good moments I left out. My favorite scene that I didn't talk about is when Tyler burns the narrator's hand out of nowhere. The narrator tries to remove his hand or to resist the chemical burn by thinking about something else, but Tyler prevents him from doing that. Eventually, when the narrator screams about Tyler not knowing how painful it is, Tyler simply shows his hand with the same chemical burn to the narrator and delivers one of the best lines from the whole movie. It's only after we have lost everything that we're free to do anything. This scene is genius to me for several reasons. It's unexpected, contains an amazing quote, and Tyler showing his chemical burn to the narrator indicates that he's going through this pain with him. One of my favorite elements from the entire movie is the way it's set up, like the narrator interacting with the audience and explaining key parts of the movie. Cinematography is also great, as well as the songs and endless amazing quotes. The cinematography itself fits the dystopian society really well, and most of the songs by the Dust Brothers for this movie, like Where Is My Mind, are really good. Also, a particular aspect I really like that I didn't mention is the way that Tyler appears for several frames early on in the movie. At the time, I didn't realize that, but this was supposed to further point out that Tyler is just a part of the narrator's imagination. Honestly, that's a genuinely clever technique. Most of the audience doesn't suspect the meaning of these frames with Tyler at all until the movie gradually progresses to the reveal. Another great part about the movie is the humor. As I mentioned, Fight Club is a dark comedy, so obviously the movie contains a lot of good jokes here. I can't list all of them, but I love all of the random moments that the narrator presents, such as the scene with the plane crashing in his imagination, only because the insurance he'd get would be higher. Honestly, most of the jokes are so good because of the acting, and I gotta admit, the acting skills here are amazing. Edward Norton and Brad Pitt do a great job playing the narrator and Tyler Durden, but I also love how Helena Bonham Carter and Meatloaf play Marla and Bob. No, I'm not including Jared Leto because his character barely even appeared here. Also, speaking of the characters, for a movie this famous, I was surprised to find out that there were only like 3 main characters here. Sure, there also were Bob, the narrator's boss, and Jared Leto's character, but I mostly consider them as side characters. By the way, my favorite character from the whole movie is probably the narrator, since I find him to be likable, charming, and even kinda relatable. What I relate to with him is probably insomnia, since even now I'm writing the script while being really sleepy. Despite all that, I feel like almost every single character here is amazing in their own ways. Last thing I want to mention is the moral behind the movie. The movie touches some serious topics like consumerism, capitalism, and the decrease in masculinity due to feminization. I myself don't have full thoughts on those topics, but I do love the moral about us having nothing without pain or sacrifice. Anyway, Fight Club is a masterpiece of a movie and I highly recommend it. For minuses, the movie does contain violence and inappropriate moments, so this is definitely something I wouldn't recommend for a younger audience. Also, the movie itself might not be your cup of tea because of its tone and atmosphere, but that just honestly depends on the person watching. For pluses, pretty much everything that I mentioned before in the video. Despite that, I still think that this is a type of movie you should watch to fully understand, so make sure to watch Fight Club if you want. Also, if you enjoyed the review, please subscribe and share your opinion about the video if you want. All I can say is, I met this movie at a very strange time in my life.